So the title of today's episode is Trump Falling Apart. That's not never Trumpism. That's not a contention, an affirmative statement that I am making today. But it is certainly an allusion to something that has been suggested by my next guest. And he is David Pakman of The David Pakman Show, joining us now on The Will Cain Show. What's up, David? Good to have you.
How are you? I am. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to exploring and engaging in dialogue during which we'll figure out, are you one of the good faith participants at foxnews.com?
Well, I'm excited to have you be my judge, jury, and executioner on my faith. But I'm excited more to have you here. We'll at times debate. We'll also explore, like you said. By the way, David, I don't know how familiar you are with me, but I think I've got a pretty strong track record of being someone who engages the opposite side in good faith, whether or not that's on ESPN or on Fox or wherever I have appeared in the past. And I have no intention of it being any different today here on the Will Cain Show. So, David, let's start with current events. Let's start with news. We'll find some disagreement, but we're also going to search for understanding as well. So Please. I was watching you recently, and you were talking specifically about Trump this past weekend at the NRA convention. If you're cool with this, what we'll do now is we'll play a clip from the David Pakman Show on YouTube, and it will include a clip of Donald Trump from the convention at the NRA.
Some calling it a terrifying cognitive moment.
Nation in the history of the world.
Even Mitch McConnell only froze a few seconds, and for people suggesting that Trump's teleprompter was glitching, regular Trump, when his teleprompter glitches, which of course you can see teleprompter there, Biden's bad for using a prompter, Obama was bad, Trump's using a teleprompter. For those who were suggesting it was glitching, normal Trump wouldn't do nothing for 35 seconds. He would rant about the teleprompter.
So now we're back live here on the Will Cain Show. For those of anyone listening on Apple or Spotify, the video shows Trump just kind of, I mean, he's not frozen like Mitch McConnell, but he's not speaking for 35 seconds. I say that, David, because Mitch McConnell stared into distance and literally froze. Trump just doesn't talk for 35 seconds. And your takeaway, based upon the headline of your video and kind of what you had to say there, is this is terrifying. And the contention seems to be, you know, in essence, he's falling apart. This is like what the right points out about Joe Biden.
Yeah, so later on in the clip, which you didn't play, I say very clearly, I'm not saying this is the same phenomenon as with Mitch McConnell. This may be more of a sort of reflecting Trump's total social disconnect from what's going on around him, and he may think that he's being deep and sort of connecting with the audience in some way by being completely silent for 35 seconds. It may be that Trump has gotten completely disconnected from sort of like society around him. It's something very strange and nothing that makes him look particularly with it. Now, I think this will be the real kind of test here. I'm willing here to stipulate that Joe Biden is not as sharp as he was 10 years ago. I've said it. If you look at the Paul Ryan debate where he ran circles around, I'm ready to stipulate that. I would have preferred someone else as the nominee. I'm wondering if you're ready to say the same about Trump compared to even 2 years ago and 4 and 10 and 12. If not, you may be in the cult, my friend.
Okay, well, you've set the terms of defining me. I reject the test on whether or not I will admit to some kind of like mental slippage from Trump compared to 10 years ago, which, by the way, in the abstract, yeah, I'm sure that to be the case. Any 77-year-old probably isn't the same guy that he was at 67 years old. But here's what I think is going on. First of all, let's deal with the technical parts of this particular clip. I don't know. I don't know if the teleprompter glitched. That's probably not my suspicion of what happened. My suspicion is what you're suggesting secondarily. I think that what happened there, and this is me guessing, right? But that music, and I'm going to admit, that's weird, like the whole music underneath when he's speaking. The music picks up, it's loud, and he senses some sort of dramatic moment and leans into that dramatic moment, which I will agree is kind of weird. But, I mean, I don't think it reflects some kind of social disconnect from Donald Trump. When you look at the way, we'll see if you can stipulate to this. He clearly connects with an audience in gathering, no matter what the truth is, we can both agree, really big audiences. When I say truth about the literal size, really big audiences at rallies. And I think that's probably what happened in that 35 seconds. He was overly dramatically leaning into whatever was going on with that music.
Yeah, being able to connect with an audience of 107,000 would be remarkable if such an audience existed at an event that really had 15,000 people. So when you say the truth of the audience size, probably a conversation for a different day. Here's my kind of view on this, because I'm not a mental health professional. I think your background is in law, so I think you aren't either. At this point, I've interviewed 4 different mental health professionals. They all agree Biden is slowing down. And when you understand the things that are tough for Biden, combined with his lifelong stutter, he very quickly corrects himself when he gets a fact wrong. He shows certain signs that they say are appropriate for an 80-plus-year-old guy. The scary thing about Trump, to the professionals, not to me, this is just what they say. When Trump confused Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, he didn't realize I'm literally saying things that make no sense. He repeated it, in fact, and continued on. When he regularly says Hungary has a border with Russia, or Orban runs Turkey, or Obama's president, or I defeated Obama, or when he doesn't realize it. And that combined with what are called phonemic paraphasias, where he glitches and can't get a word out, and then white flags, like the infamous Saudi Arabia, and then he moves on to something else. That's concerning the mental health professionals I talk to, and I have to go by the professionals because I'm not one.
Because the professionals have a sterling track record over the last 5 years. No intellectual capture or groupthink within the professional class. But
well,
David, here's what I think's going
about
on.
The particular individuals. It's very easy to generically say, "Oh, the professionals." Demonstrate it about the specific people making the claims and bring something alternative forward. I'll give you one other example if I can.
Well, I don't know the specific. I mean, to be fair, you haven't cited anyone. You have cited also a generic
Dr. John Gartner,
professionals
Dr.
I've
Harry
talked
Siegel.
to. So
I mean, I can provide.
I can't
the list.
rebut them. Yeah, but I haven't seen what they had to say or don't know who they are, so I can't sit here and rebut their testimony to you on the David Pakman show. What I can say is I think this is, and I'm saying this, and this isn't, I don't want one of these slap fight stupid debates, and I don't think any of us are going to do that.
No.
But here's what I think's going on, David, and I'm going to be real with you, and you just tell me,
Please.
No, Will, I think you're wrong. That's not what I'm doing. I think you're creating a false equivalency. So I think what you're doing, and I'm not going to argue for Trump's perfection, but this is like you going 90 miles an hour in a 55 and trying to point out that I went 60. Yeah, okay, Trump has some failings, but they don't measure to the thing that you admitted, which is Joe Biden just this week said, that he was vice president during the pandemic. He didn't correct himself right after that, David. He said Obama sent him to Detroit to work with the mayor of Detroit during the pandemic because he was vice president. We're off by how many years are we off by? By like 7 or 8 in that situation. 6 years in that situation. But that's just one anecdote, and we could just go on. And I think that what you're doing is seeing your own vulnerability. And when I say that, your own, in that you're sort of arguing on behalf of Biden and I'm sort of arguing on behalf of Trump in this pseudo debate. You're sensing your own vulnerability and trying to, offer up some equivalency, which is just totally off. Trump may be going 60 and 55, but Biden is veering off into the ditch at 120.
Okay, I think I understand your perspective. I do, like you said, I do totally disagree with you. And I think the greatest example of this is the following. All of the predictions about Biden's decline fail to materialize, and he does fine. I'll give you some examples. 2020 primary. He's going to debate Bernie. He won't be able to speak. He won't know it's a debate. He'll soil his diaper. He does fine. Okay, now the 2020 debate against Trump is coming up. He won't even be able to stand. He'll be facing backwards. He'll fall down. It's absolutely fine. He ends up winning the election. Okay, State of the Union's coming up. He can't possibly deliver a 100-minute speech. He does it, and it goes so well that now they've switched to, it's so good he must be on drugs, yet they can't cite the drug that would achieve what it is that they claim is being achieved. To counter that, Will.
Well, can I just ask you on that, David? I can't prove that, right? But I know you did this on your show recently, and you can you really dismiss that as absurd, though? I mean, I can't prove it.
What are you talking about right now?
You're bringing up, oh my God, he's done so good that he's on performance-enhancing drugs of some kind. He's shot up with something.
It's all over your network. Have
Obviously,
you seen the morning show on Fox News?
I host the morning show, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, my co-host said it this past weekend on Fox and Friends. What I'm telling you is
examples.
It's not an absurd...
He's juicing, he's taking injections, Byron Donalds.
Hold on, David. I'm not debating you on that. I know
you're
that's
agreeing
being said.
Okay, good.
What I'm asking... Yeah, I'm not... I know that it's being said. What I'm saying to you is... It's not absurd to say it. I don't say it because I can't have proof in it. But every single one of us watching, including not just the right and Republicans, wonder, how is it one guy one way, and in these big moments, these big stages like you talk about, a different guy a different way? And I don't think it's this like absurd leap to go, whoa, Provigil, Adderall, I don't know, whatever. But he's on something that's amping him up because he's a different dude.
Let's talk about Adderall and Provigil. Now we're in substance. Now we're getting into it, right, Will? Adderall and Ritalin, they work 4 to 6 hours. The idea that Byron Donalds presented on your channel, that by the end of a 1-hour speech he's fading, not how Adderall and Ritalin work. And Adderall and Ritalin famously don't cover up cognitive decline, and when there is cognitive decline, can generate anxiety and more difficulty speaking. So Adderall, Ritalin wouldn't do what you're saying.
So you're saying there's no drug that could be serving as a performance enhancer for Joe Biden in these situations.
You're jumping ahead. Let me get through it. So Adderall and Ritalin wouldn't do what you're suggesting. Provigil has a 12 to 15-hour duration. So again, like Byron Donald goes, you can tell because it wears off at the end of an hour. It doesn't work that way. And also Provigil's effect on dementia is 0. So now let me turn it around to you. You tell me the drug. It's weird to say, I think there might be a drug. David, tell me which one it is. You tell me what drug would do what you're suggesting.
To be fair, okay, you've done two things there, okay, and we're shifting burdens of proof. But my burden of proof is not...
You asserted drugs, and I'm asking you what drugs.
I did not. Hold on, walk with me here. First, the Byron Donalds argument is a straw man with me because you specifically rebutted that it wears off. I never said that, and I don't think that undercuts or rebuts the idea that he could be on some type of performance enhancer. I also didn't make the affirmative statement that he is on performance enhancers. What I said to you is, you have contended that's absurd. Look at the guy. This is evidence of his cognitive abilities that he can rally for these big moments. What I'm telling you is my co-host or anybody else that says, or somebody sitting at the backyard barbecue says, he's injected on all kinds of things to amp him up for the debate is not an absurd supposition. I don't have to prove the affirmative on it. I just have to tell you, you rejecting it is the burden of proof. You can't reject, and I think you have a hard hill to climb to say, there's no way he's on anything like that.
In order to say it's not an absurd suggestion, you have to at least plausibly bring a specific substance known to man that would do what is being alleged, which is it would take someone suffering from cognitive decline who struggles to even understand what he's saying and make them coherent in the way that it is being described. So the burden of proof is on those who say it's plausible to say, here's the list of drugs that could do it. And even here's one other thing before you jump in. I wouldn't expect you to come up with the right drug because yesterday morning, Dr. Ronnie Jackson on Fox News couldn't even propose what drug would do it. If the pill guy from Air Force One can't suggest it, I know you're not going to be able to.
Well, and okay, to be fair, also, just because I'm into the logic of these debates, you rebutted Adderall based upon the premise of Byron Donald's statement that it wears off. That's
only one element.
Additive to the contention that is only by one man, Byron Donalds, that it wears off. It doesn't undercut the idea.
Forget about Byron. It also does not hide dementia symptoms, and it can make folks with dementia more agitated and anxious, which would be very bad for Biden's speeches.
Once again, though, David, you're using specifics, and I appreciate your use of specifics on certain things, but you've put into
I'm using specifics.
But you're planting the debate. You keep planting my position.
But then give me the drug.
I can't diagnose Adderall.
You mentioned Adderall.
No. You're building assumptions on top of one another with me. For example, I haven't made the contention that he has dementia because I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose him. But I can also look at him as a common sense human being and go, something's not right with Joe Biden, whatever it is. Then you use my assumption that I said dementia or whatever else it is, and
you said
and then
Adderall
use that as a way to say there's no performance enhancer that could solve these specific things that you made as part of the assumption.
Here's what I think, Will. I think the Biden cognitive decline story is a loser for the right, and this conversation is proving it. I'm willing to leave it there.
Okay, I disagree because I'll tell you this. We're talking about the average independent out there. I actually think it's one of the most important voting factors for the average independent. That they see what's going on with Joe Biden, and they sense a lack of competency. I don't mean in just intellectual failings. I mean age-related decline.
Why isn't it showing up in any poll that is a major concern for independent voters?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. By the way,
maybe it's not.
Well, I mean, maybe it is. David, let me ask you this. Let's both do this. I want you now to tell me your biggest criticism of your quote-unquote side.
Okay. Just define my side so I know what we're talking about.
I wondered if you would do that. But I mean, I
think
it's fair to say
I'm not a Democrat, so I just want to clarify. I'm not a Democrat. So if
positionally
you meant the
on
Democratic
the left?
Party, the left. Okay, fair. No, that's fair. I just want to make sure we're on the right terms.
I don't like parties.
Good.
Yeah, I don't like parties.
My biggest criticism right now of the left.
The left.
My biggest criticism right now of the left is what I call litmus test leftism, where we might agree on 95% of stuff, but there are certain litmus tests that are put in place by some of my fellow leftists, which if you don't meet or pass, you're kicked out. And I've cited over the years many examples of this. When Jewish women weren't oppressed and intersectional enough to be part of the Women's March leadership, I immediately was alienated from the entire Women's March movement. Or when the Queers for Palestine all of a sudden is melding movements that I think are separate movements, and I get alienated from the LGBT movement because I see the hostility towards folks like me who have a more balanced view on Israel, Gaza. That type of litmus test leftism is one of my biggest gripes with my side right now.
All right, and to be fair, so I think that argument or that failing of the right has been something that people have talked about as well. It's like everything has to be pure at this point. But I'm actually not going to do that, even though I'm going to admit that's also a failing on the right. I would say the biggest criticism I have of quote-unquote my side is that there's too much playing to the cheap seats, that there is too much, it's cliched to say outrage, right? Clickbait, viral. There's too much emphasis on what political people would say is rallying your base as opposed to winning over independents. To be honest, David, this is one of the things that, for example, I have learned to appreciate about Donald Trump. Ideologically, he is much more of a pragmatist. He is much more of a populist and is diverted from partisan politics that you would have seen a decade ago within Republicans. But the idea that everything has to, and look, I mean, you're on YouTube, so we understand how everything has to be destroyed and everything has to be terrifying or whatever it may be. There's too much on the right that is focused on outraging the people that already agree with you.
That's very interesting. I have a different take on your criticism of Trump and them getting away from certain policies, which some see as no longer being pure. Trump has really abandoned in what I would argue is really the worst way in terms of having people on my side that we can work with people on your side. A lot of the really important principles of conservatism from the last 60 years. I mean, just to take one, there was a time where your traditional conservative Republican was not an authoritarian maniac who wanted to stay in power after losing an election, shut down media outlets he doesn't like, weaponize the Justice Department against his political enemies, etc. When I see the right now, I would love to go back to when the right was not authoritarian in this way. And we could say, let's deep dive on what sort of tax system is best for the country and get into that rather than seeing these supposed conservative principles abandoned. So we're speaking in different language, obviously, and we have a different opinion, but I don't know that we're saying necessarily dramatically different things. The one other disagreement I have with what you said is I actually don't think that the right is holding Trump accountable for his abandonment of those principles because listen, 40% of the Republican primary electorate went for someone other than Trump, but he's still easily going to be the nominee, even though he's abandoned all those principles. So I wonder whether the Republican voters even care.
So let's talk about this repositioning of conservatives by Donald Trump. So in many ways, and I'm going to guess, I guess you're not one of these people from the left. What Donald Trump has managed to do is be truly independent. I don't yearn for the days to go back to arguing over tax rates. I think that's important, and we need to have that conversation. But I don't yearn for the days that our differences were a highest marginal tax rate between 36% and 50%. That's not the most existential debate to the future of our republic. What Donald Trump has done, and this is why I bring you up as compared to others on the left, has actually bridged some gaps that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you would have vilified somebody on the right for. For example, first of all, much more dovish on foreign war. Much, I don't think an isolationist, but much more through the prism of whatever it is militarily, how does it serve America first? Where the George W. Bush, Mitt Romney Republican, who by the way, at that time on the left was described as a devil for all of these wars, that now seems to be a part of the left's neocon shift. Whether or not it's Ukraine or whatever it may be, the left is now much more the party who is looking for big foreign wars. And Donald Trump, not the entire right, not the entire Republican Party, but Donald Trump is the one pushing it in a less neocon vision. Same thing on the economy. 10, 15 years ago, it was the left who was concerned about domestic production. And let's talk about tariffs on various places like China, when the right was more libertarian capitalism, free trade. And I think a concern for the middle class and the American working class is a good repositioning because of Donald Trump. By the way, we've seen the movement, for example, of union voters towards Donald Trump, previous Democrats towards Donald Trump because of that kind of position. And I think that what I worry about your side, I don't know if it's a repositioning or if it's a truth. You're too wedded to institutional power. There was a time when the left was skeptical and rebellious of institutional power, and now you're indistinguishable from institutional power. Whether or not it's the experts you quoted, or that's a side note, but like the medical establishment all the way to the top, government authority, including the military-industrial complex, the left's embrace of institutional power as a sign of their devotion to democracy is incredibly concerning.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I don't know that we can do all of that in the depth that it probably deserves in the time we have left, but I would say a couple things. I think your analysis of Trump's shifts are accurate if you replace what's best for the country with what's best for Trump. I agree with the analysis. I would just replace that. The prism through which Trump analyzes everything is what is best for him. I mean, I think the abortion thing is a great example where at the end of the day, he got his 3 justices, Roe v. Wade's overturned, disaster politically in the sense that there's more of the population now thinking abortion should be legal in most cases than ever in American history. And Trump realizes this may not be good for me. So what does he do? He just basically says, hey, listen, kind of whatever. Like, if you don't like it and you want to ban it in your state, cool. Some states are going to say it's fine. And hey, that's it. As long as you vote for me, essentially do whatever you want. So my one modification to the way that Trump has modified things, it's what's best for him. I'm sure you'll disagree, but that was kind of the first thing that
No, I won't disagree, but I'll just ask you this, just as one interjection on that point.
Yeah.
So what? If his motivation is to get elected?
What is the following?
Real quick, let me finish the thought, please.
Okay.
Real quick, just finish that. So what? So what his motivations are, whether or not it's adherence to some ideological belief or his own personal political success, so what? That doesn't distinguish him from any other politician outside of the founding fathers, quite honestly. The most politicians are doing something for their own personal electoral success. But if it gets us to the right place, so what when it comes to the motivation?
Yeah, I just totally disagree. I think that's a way to completely whitewash what is a fundamental difference in vision between Biden and Trump. And to be clear, I only defend Biden in the context of I think he's better than Trump and I plan to vote for him in November. It's not, I don't deify Biden. I have no Biden hats or boats or anything like that. Okay, so it's just I think in these two choices, I think he's better. So much of what Biden has done, quite literally, he could either have not done, or there is no obvious benefit to a guy who has no races left to run 6 months from now. And I just don't,
Give me
and
an
you can
example.
disagree. I don't see
Give me an
the
example.
personal, well, for example, Trump's motivations with so much of the way he has run this campaign has been, can I keep myself out of prison if that's what it comes to? To say so what to such a self-centered motivation is very different than saying, well, Biden did chips and science because it'll be generically good for his presidency. These are very different things. And while I agree with you that to some degree, anyone who thinks I'm qualified to be president has some egocentrism, there's no doubt about it. I do think that we're conflating two dramatically different things here. It may just be a difference of opinion. I see them as very different.
Well, but stay with Biden for 1 second. I mean, positionally, he's an entirely different human being than he was, certainly from the 90s, from the 70s, even from 10 years ago. I mean, he's switched positions on really important issues. He is absolutely 180 degrees different than who he was in the past. He's the Hyde Amendment and abortion, student loan forgiveness. It's a blatant electoral ploy, and he's the guy that helped create the student loan industry and ensured that students wouldn't have bankruptcy protection and getting out of student loans. That's Joe Biden from the state of Delaware, and today he wants to forgive student loans in order to get elected. Obviously,
but is
crime.
This a criticism
everyone's
because
pointed
he
that out.
changed opinion, or a criticism because he changed to an opinion you no longer like?
Neither. I do not begrudge a politician changing his opinion. This is about your indictment of motivations. It's about you, and you're saying, I said motivations don't matter. But you're giving Joe Biden some kind of pure motivational ploy that he does things regardless of his electoral ploy. I'm telling you, he's doing all these things so that he can get elected to a second term.
I think it's obvious that many of Joe Biden's positions over 50 years have become more in line with what we are now seeing on the left. I mean, listen, rescheduling cannabis, right? I don't think Joe Biden was interested in, nor did it fit in with what the left wanted to see in the early 90s to get cannabis off of Schedule 1, for example. I think that Joe Biden's position has evolved on that in alignment with where the country has gone. The difference is Trump becoming anti-abortion at age 68 because he met a kid that he liked and the mom said, I thought about getting an abortion. I'm glad I didn't. And now we are supposed to believe at age 68 that made Trump against abortion. That is totally self-centered and driven only in what can I use to get people to support me. It's obviously untrue. Trump is obviously pro-choice personally. I just see that as different than Biden's position on cannabis evolving over a 50-year period.
I think cannabis is one, but I mean, we're peering into the motivations. My contention is pretty simple. Politicians do things they think are popular in order to get elected. So, pick the ones that hold the positions or changing towards the positions that you believe. So, and by the way, those who are competent and strong leaders. Let's do this really quickly, and then I'm going to return to current events. Now I'm going to offer the biggest criticism of my side, and I'll offer the biggest criticism of your side. Singular. We'll do it singular, right?
I mean, listen, it's so tough. It's so tough. I think if I zoom out from any particular issue, quite frankly, I just think your side has essentially abandoned a shared basis in fact from which we can discuss almost any issue.
I mean, that's a hard one for me to rebut, generalized. And I know that
it's tough because
you
it's
do
true,
a show on this on a daily basis, but well, I mean, again, like you said earlier, you and I could do hours on this, but the party that's interested in a misinformation bureau while peddling misinformation is not one that's wedded to reality and the facts. My biggest criticism of your side would be the following: it's unmoored. While Donald Trump has moved Republicans in a populist direction, and populism's a fire you have to be careful with. It'll burn out of control. The plus side of populism is you're perhaps more in touch with the voter, their concerns. but you have to have principles to keep that fire under control. Yours is totally unmoored, and it just what was this? What's a sin today was a position yesterday, and the speed of which it goes, progressivism in general, is impossible to keep up with. You know, I mean, Barack
What's an
Obama
example of that?
would be considered. Oh, gay marriage is an easy one. Moving into LGBTQ issues, moving into trans issues. I mean, like, Barack Obama was opposed to gay marriage. Here we are, 10 years later, a little more than that. And it's like we're having a fight about what is a boy and what is a girl and whatnot. That can be self-defined. It's just totally unmoored from any kind of principle, and it follows whatever is perceived to be popular. I don't even think by the vast majority of people. You bring up cannabis. That's setting that one aside. I don't think you're following a 51% proposition on most of these unmoored positions. It's actually by a really radical, loud, extreme minority that drives you in these positions that are unmoored from principles, and who knows where that wind will take you. Your boat's going to end in really crazy seas if it's unmoored from not just like documents like limitations on power through the Constitution, but principles.
Yeah, that is a lot. So first of all, some of these allegations maybe are more appropriate for other people that are considered to be on the left. They don't ring true to me. I mean, to say, gay marriage as an example, it's been, 18 years, I think, since Obama changed his view on that or something like that. Gay marriage was a fight that lasted decades, it seems. I don't really know where gay marriage has a role to play here. What I can tell you is the following.
Well, it shows a starting point and a present point.
Yeah, it used to be illegal. Now it's legal. It's no big deal. There's been no societal harm that has come from it that I can identify. I mean, I don't know. We could talk about gay marriage.
Well, we're not in a debate about gay marriage. We're having a debate about the way these positions evolve at such a rapid pace.
I am sure you can find, because we're doing this in good faith, I don't have to defend everything the left does. Yeah. I'm sure you can find examples of what you're talking about, of people who are completely unmoored, morally blind. We can find them on the left. We can find them on the right. I'm very comfortable with where I am on the political spectrum, which is that we are economically, socially democratic, which is a form of capitalism. It's a form of capitalism which is not dramatically different from what we have in the United States right now. Secular humanism as a sort of guiding light in terms of ethical and moral principles, which has overlap with some of the major religions, but doesn't want to impose it as a way of defining government. And in terms of your prediction of the ship sinking, it all kind of points to places like Denmark, which have an extraordinarily high standard of living, slightly higher taxes, which include a bunch of stuff you don't have to worry about paying for out of pocket. It's not a radical vision, in my view, and for most of the world,
In the abstract, I understand. In the abstract, I understand it doesn't sound radical. What I would say is that point, always pointing to the Scandinavian nations as a model for the future, is just, it's like pointing to the moon. It's just not the same place as a nation of, what are we now, 350 million people, incredibly diverse. I mean, that's a homogenous society where a social safety net is much easier to sell than a diverse country like America. What's that?
That argument falls flat. I've got a whole chapter in my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, about this. It's often said that the homogeneity argument is often repeated about Denmark, about Sweden. You actually look in 2024 at the breakdown in terms of national origin and in terms of race. It's changed dramatically. The countries are still doing well. The business environment is good. I would also add, Will,
that's a recent phenomenon.
We don't only, no, it's been changing since the 70s. We don't only have to look at Scandinavian countries. We can look at Uruguay around 2010. Obviously, we have to adjust for the broader environment in Latin America. We can look at the Kerala state in India. We can look at the German Socially Democratic Party. I don't want to turn this into a history lesson, but if you're bored with homogenous countries and Scandinavia, we can look elsewhere. It's fine.
Well, we'll leave this. We'll go one last current event topic, but just more on this esoteric, broader thing. Yeah, my vision is completely different than yours. While you described this social democratic economy, undergirded by secular humanism, mine is a capitalist, laissez-faire, relatively, everything is graded on a scale here, society with limited government as imposed by founding documents, some of the most genius documents created in the history of man, but undergirded by a Judeo-Christian ethic that is required. The founding fathers believed that, by the way, like you have to have some type of governor on society, and that governor is the individual morality of your civilians, not the moral imposition of a government. And so that vision we have, I think, is pretty different. I mean, freedom is great, but freedom isn't the end of the story, right? Human behavior has to be limited in some way, and that limitation, as envisioned here, and my argument is all those countries you make is they're nothing compared to the United States. This experiment, based upon that foundation that I just described, has been the best in humanity.
Yeah, all right. We definitely have different visions. I mean, I think it sounds like you want to move on, but I think it's an interesting question to explore. If the religious component is so important, why are some of the most prosperous and safest countries with the best business environments the least religious? Something to think about.
You talking about Europe?
Some of them are in Europe.
Yeah. I think that my argument in response to that would be Europe is living at the tail end of an experiment, economically, population base-wise, that you're looking at essentially the Joe Biden of civilizations. You're looking at civilizations in decline, living on a past where, to your point of Scandinavia, they were much more homogenous, all much more bought in to a social democratic experiment, shared interest, shared future, that when you're dealing with a massively diverse population, the best way you can push everybody forward is honestly through freedom. That's, I mean, maximalization of freedom.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, and just as a reminder,
all right.
My vision is a capitalist vision as well, as long as we're on the same page about that.
Okay. Let's do Michael Cohen really quickly. You did a video. You might have done it before cross-examination. You might have done it during direct, where you kind of like contended that Michael Cohen was undoing Donald Trump in New York, that it was devastating testimony. I think you did that before cross-examination. Now that there's been more cross-examination, do you still feel the same way?
Well, listen, I mean, Cohen's not on trial. Trump is. Cohen has been tried. Cohen has lied. But what I think is maybe most important here is if Cohen was under oath and is subject to being charged with perjury, if Trump and his lawyers really felt good about an alternative explanation of the facts, they could put that forward rather than having Trump claim he's going to testify and having Alina Habba claim he's going to testify for months and then, we rest our case. So the person who's under oath and subject to a legal problem if they perjure themselves is Michael Cohen. But maybe more importantly, there is so much corroboration to the big picture of the story, the 11 invoices and the general ledger entries and Trump slipping up and saying, we did this and we did that, that I don't know, it's going to come down to the jury. I wasn't in the courtroom. I don't know if you were, but I don't know that I have anything insanely explosive to say about this.
Right. I mean, I would just disagree. Michael Cohen is on trial because he is the star witness, so his credibility is essentially on trial. And, the fact that he's under oath, he has shown doesn't matter. I mean, he has no fidelity to the truth or to an oath. He's a convicted perjurer. And I think his motivations have been laid out in cross-examination. I mean, he hates Donald Trump. More than that, he's stolen from Donald Trump. I mean, that came out in an admission of thievery, of stealing money from Donald Trump. So now you've got a star witness that hates Donald Trump, that's lied, that's stolen from him. And I mean, in the end, I can't predict what 12 human beings are going to do. I think we're all inherently emotional human beings, and it's hard for people to judge things based upon facts and evidence. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I think that Michael Cohen, it appears, and I accept as well my humility that I wasn't in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Appears a very, very weak star witness.
Yeah, it'll be up to the jury to decide. There were more than a dozen other witnesses. They all had essentially the same story. There was this defense witness, Robert Costello, that went completely haywire and off the rails. The Trump defense didn't really present any alternative explanation. And so the question is,
Costello testified that Trump didn't know.
Will a jury that saw 13 witnesses, one of which is Michael Cohen, who they have reasonable reason to be suspicious of potentially, I will even grant that, will they say, oh, it's not guilty on the basis of that 1 out of 13? Like you're saying, I just don't know. The one thing I will tell you is Trump has still not even admitted that this affair took place. So if you want to talk about dishonesty, I don't know that the honest side and the honest story overall is coming from the defense. It'll be up to the jury to decide.
But and you and I can't. That's like you and me sitting here at halftime predicting the winner of an NBA playoff game. We can't do that. We have no idea what this jury will decide. Last on this, I mean, do you really think this is a pursuit of justice, or is this a political show trial? I mean, you look at this. It's misdemeanors. It's NDAs. Everybody signs NDAs. It's hard to bootstrap a crime out of this, even if there was a crime, like what, miscoding this, recording this in the files. I mean, how many different businesses in New York are doing that? So, like, even if Trump were guilty of that, so what? and then, by the way, if he's guilty of that, the statute of limitations is run, so you got to Frankenstein some kind of felony out of it. It still doesn't make any sense. It just all adds up to
that's not.
This is not a pursuit of justice. It's a political trial.
It's not a compelling argument to me. You've got to look at each of those things you said one by one. The misdemeanor into felony thing, there's a lot of people acting like this is a one-off, that this is being done. I believe this prosecutor has done it like 1,000 times or something along those lines. So the idea that that is the proof that this is some kind of fabricated or forced thing, that doesn't really make sense. You can make it. I think here's what I would be willing to kind of concede, and maybe we'll agree on this. I interviewed Elie Honig, the CNN former prosecutor, legal analyst. He said he does think that this particular trial, not the other three, but this one, that the timing and the total number of charges were influenced by a broader interest in telling a story and telling it at a particular time. The evidence is Trump's clearly guilty, is his opinion. But the timing and number of charges, one could argue, were influenced by who Trump is and the forthcoming election. I'd be willing to concede that.
Well, I appreciate that. You have been willing to hear me out and understand, and at times concede. I hope I've been a similarly gracious host while we had moments of irreconcilable differences. It is fascinating to talk to someone that you disagree with. If nothing else, old co-host of mine on First Take used to say, the thing about debate is I either get smarter, I win, or I get smarter, one or the other. So, at times we disagree. At times we're just understanding one another. You have an open door invitation, David, to come here on the Will Cain Show whenever you'd like.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you doing so today. I'd love to continue to have conversations with you, David Pakman.
I would love that. And your audience is welcome to call me and confront me when I take live calls about all the things I got wrong. I would love to do it, and I look forward to hearing from them.
Okay. All right. It's the David Pakman Show. It's on YouTube. As you mentioned, he has a call-in line, so you can participate in not just hearing me and him go back and forth, but you can go back and forth with him as well. David, thanks so much for your time today.
All right. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Take care. There goes David Pakman of the David Pakman Show. As Mario Tejada said, should be good. Can't wait for David Pakman to infantilize Will Cain on his own show. 3 crying face LOL emojis. There you go, Mario. Did it happen for you? Are you not entertained? Did you get the blood that you wanted in the gladiator arena? Or did we have the beginning of a conversation where we can have a back and forth where it is all too often rare? All right. Go check him out at the David Pakman Show on YouTube. That's going to do it for me today here on The Will Cain Show. Subscribe, YouTube right here. Check us out on Facebook. Subscribe, Spotify, Apple. We'll revisit that conversation, break it down, and do so much more tomorrow here on The Will Cain Show. I'll see you next time.